Hello, everyone. My name is Katya, and I am a product manager at Fluke Biomedical. We are glad to welcome you here today for the second episode of Quick Connections by Fluke Biomedical. This is a new series for us. It's a new series of online events that we launched earlier this month. And here at Quick Connections, we invite you to join us for a 30-minute conversation with biomedical professionals, opinion leaders, and all kinds of industry experts. Since this is a new series for us, we would really appreciate your feedback on it. There will be a quick survey at the end of the webinar, so please use it to let us know how we can make this event better for you in the future. Or, if you have any topics in mind that you would like us to cover, people you would like us to invite for a conversation, also please let us know. Even though we're meeting here today for only a 30-minute chat, you're still eligible to receive an CU credit for listening in. So let me briefly tell you how to receive that credit before we start. So first of all, you need to attend the event, and you need to attend an event as a whole because you're only meeting for 30 minutes here. And then once you're done watching it, you will get a link from us in an email that will come from Fluke Biomedical within 24 hours after the webinar has ended. The link will be available to you for 72 hours. To click on it, fill out a really quick survey that we have there, and then from there you will be able to download your certificate. So very quick, easy, simple. Oh no, wrong title. All right, so today we are, for today's Quick Connections conversation, we are inviting Michael Raiche, our Senior Portfolio Manager at Fluke Biomedical, and Benjamin Roberts, CBET, who is a biomedical professor at Seattle College. And I will let both Michael and Ben introduce themselves and take away with the conversation.
All right, let me get my camera started. My name is Mike Raiche. I am a portfolio manager here at Fluke Biomedical. And by history, I used to be a product marketing manager and a product manager here, responsible for the patient simulation lines, the gas flow analyzer lines, and the defibrillator analyzer lines. So a lot of subject matter depth and history, and I'm looking forward to talk through some tips and tricks and have a good conversation with Ben on how to increase productivity in terms of electrical safety testing.
And hello, I'm Ben Roberts. I've been in the electronics industry for almost 30 years now. And the last third of that, I've been in the healthcare industry. I have been a technician, a hiring manager, a system engineer, and a design engineer within my time in my career field. I currently hold a CBET, as Katya said, and also my electrical license. And I am looking forward to this conversation with Michael to hopefully share a little bit of my knowledge with you all, like I do in my current role as a professor at North Seattle College.
Well, that's great. Thanks for joining us. And to kick things off, I think maybe for the attendees from the US on the call, I'd like to just start chatting about the biggest thing that's changed in terms of electrical safety, which is NFPA 99 over the years. I think one of the questions that it begs is whether you should or should not test, or have to or do not have to test. Because obviously if you test less or less frequently, that aids in your productivity. Let's start with one of your viewpoints. What do you think about NFPA 99 and what it's done?
Perfect. Now, it's caused some confusion because NFPA 99, and I'm going to tie this in a little bit with CMS. So there is some confusion around NFPA 99 because the Center for Medicare and Medicaid, abbreviated as CMS, is still looking at the 2012 testing requirements, where NFPA 99 just has come out with the requirements for the latest update is for 2021. So the National Fire Protection Agency makes the requirements for testing for the equipment for the fire marshal is requiring for testing around the NFPA 2021. For regulatory requirements still is under the requirements for the 2012. So there's the first part of the confusion. Now, for preventive maintenance is a little more towards your question. A lot of people will look at the requirements as, hey, the 2012 requirement says I only have to test on incoming inspection, one, and when I have to do maintenance where the case is open. Okay, so that's the other time. Well, hold on. The other time that isn't explicitly called out is when the service manual is calling for electrical safety. So that's something that is also required where you have to do your electrical safety testing, is when the manufacturer is calling it. And that's when CMS is saying you have to do the electrical safety, is following the manufacturer's guidelines. So that's the third requirement, is when the regulatory body is calling for it. And that's called out in NFPA 99. However, it's not explicitly saying follow the manufacturer's guidelines. So that's something that is needed. So when you're doing the incoming inspection, when you open the case and exposing the internal components, and when an other body is calling for it. And one of those other bodies can be the state body, another regulatory body, or the manufacturer. So it's not saying or and calling out the manufacturers per se, but that's one of those things that has to be recognized as the preventive maintenance. So it's not more or less, but that's where a lot of that confusion's coming from, is it's not saying, well, this is called out during the preventive maintenance. Well, it is. It's called out by the manufacturers.
And when you say called out by the manufacturers, you called out the service manual. What about people that might be referencing the user manual?
So that's a great question. Now, it can be called out in the user manuals. Now, there are times where the user manuals or operator manuals call for preventive maintenance. Now, this is a preventive maintenance on the user side. So this could be routine cleaning. This could be functionality checks like button checks or replacing papers or printouts. However, the service manual has a more in-depth preventive maintenance. So this is where you need to make sure you're looking at both your resources. And so not just looking at one or the other. And quite explicitly, as a faculty member, this is one of the assignments I have my new biomeds do, is go out and look and make sure that they're looking at the service manual and not the user manual or the operator's manual. Because on some equipment, they do have call outs to preventive maintenance for the users. And like I just used as an example, they will have that routine cleaning, some functionality check, but it's not as in-depth as what this service preventive maintenance calls for. And the other thing is there's a difference between a 6-month preventive maintenance, annual preventive maintenance, and sometimes even a 5-year preventive maintenance. So make sure that your call outs for how long your routine preventive maintenance is, because that might differ too.
So I want to call out a section of the NFPA 99 2021 version and just get your thoughts, because I think it encompasses a couple of the things you're talking about. So in 10.5.2.1.1, the facility shall establish policies and protocols to identify what patient care related electrical equipment requires periodic inspection, and where applicable, the type of test and intervals of testing. So in that one clause, it's really left everything onto the facility in terms of, do I test? What tests do I run? And how often do I test it? Where should people go for input in terms of where to find those three kind of categories? Yeah, I mean, how should they really decide that?
Correct. And this is where it's allowing for that flexibility for the alternative equipment maintenance plan. So they're not dictating how to do this, but this is where it comes back to that risk analysis or that patient safety, where you need to start back at the manufacturer. And so you have to have the manufacturer's literature, and this is where that helpful guidance by whatever regulatory bodies you're following under, either being Joint Commission or DNV, and saying, okay, this is where the manufacturer is starting, and then if you opt to use the alternative equipment maintenance plan, AEM, that you can have that flexibility. You can document your deviating from what the manufacturer's requiring for that. And so this is not where the NFPA is not locking you into something that is allowing for that. Now, there are specific types of equipment that the NFPA says that you cannot deviate from, such as x-rays or lasers, that they'll explicitly call out, says you cannot deviate from these, or brand new pieces of equipment that no one's seen before that has just come onto the market. So there's explicit things, and excuse me, I misspoke when I said NFPA, I meant CMS, that says you cannot deviate from that. So this is where they're allowing for that flexibility to do AEMs. So that's where you need to have that. And the key thing here is being able to have those clear documentations and being able to do those calibrations that's appropriate as needed, and allow for those to be more effective within your management of time. But the key factor there is patient safety.
Yeah, and so I think you've touched on a couple of things. You've touched on, CMS can be another source, right? The user manual, the service manual can be a source of what to do in terms of those three categories. And you talked about two different things, right? There was a data-based approach, right, which is kind of what's more used by AEMs, but there's also a risk-based approach that somebody could follow in terms of, hey, I wasn't given a test frequency. Let me determine on my own. But again, that one needs data as well from the industry or from the hospital's own experience.
Correct. And the main thing is having that data and having the documentation to say, this is what I'm doing, this is how I'm backing it up, and you have to have it based off of something. It could be from industry, from a larger database outside of your healthcare group that you're working within. It could be from a national database, but it needs to be based off of something other than this sounds good, opposed to here's a statistical sampling of what we're doing. It needs to be, we're checking it for this frequency and this amount for this reason, and this is how we're documenting it. And then recording what and why you're doing it and having it be based off of that make model.
Yeah, so it's important to know which medical devices you can and cannot increase productivity on in terms of decreasing test stringency or test frequency. But yeah, it's all about adopting a procedure, right? Justifying that procedure is correct to use and sticking to it, right? I think that's what the accrediting bodies are really going to look for.
Absolutely, yeah. And the main thing is that they're looking for is the keeping that patient safety. And that's one of the things that in the multiple roles that hats I've worn is as a technician, we're looking out there for being able to say, okay, this is the type of equipment I'm looking at. And there's many times where we're looking at the frequency and access to the equipment and saying, this is something the end user can identify as being appropriately functioning. For example, does the light come on and off when I lift this up, or, does this function correctly? Other times we actually need simulators and other types of devices to actually calibrate and calculate, does this thing work or is it giving us false data? So, that's something where the end user might not be able to do that. And that's where our electrical safety devices come in, is an end user will not be able to say, is this working within the parameters of this, because they don't have that test equipment. And then we can follow that data. Now, it's one of the big things that as a manager is, are we going through and are we getting this in a timely manner, and does this make sense for patient safety, and does our number of technicians and our workload make sense for this device? And that's that balancing act between documentation, patient safety, and the number of full-time employees, or FTEs. And that's part of my role as a manager. I had to balance out. And so that's part of those ongoing conversations that change, especially as our workload change. And that's something that a lot of people have had to experience this past year, or going on a year and a half now, is changing workloads and changing demands, and how we adapt with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you talked about those competing needs there, right? And I think overarching the goal of the entire industry is patient safety. But how do you balance that in terms of productivity? Where do you draw the line? Do you have any thoughts on that?
So one thing I have always tried to instill into my students and my employees is that balance is a moving target. It's somewhere between the extremes, and it's something that you need to be mindful as industry changes. And we've seen a lot of changes over the past year and a half, as I just alluded to. Sometimes it happens quickly, like we've seen recently. Sometimes it happens slowly, and we have a little bit of luxury to move. But sometimes when it's moving slowly, we unfortunately move slower with it. So we can use that. But a lot of times when it's moving slowly, our equipment's moving slowly with it too. So with that, just be mindful of how we're able to adapt and how we're able to move, because a lot of times having those conversations and it is sometimes challenging. Sometimes those challenges are having those conversations with our technicians and hearing their needs, and sometimes it's conveying that information up to the C-suite, and so they understand. And a lot of times it's being able to share that information in a clear, concise way. And one of the best ways I've been able to find it is to have good documentation, both as myself as a technician, but also as a supervisor and hiring manager, is to be able to clearly consolidate that information provided by the technicians to provide that data up to the senior administrations in the C-suite. And so that's where good documentation and working with a database and a good CMMS is helpful. And so having good open communications from the C-suite down to the technicians, and from the technicians up to the C-suite, and having that communication flow really helps with being able to meet that changing flexibility and being able to meet those demands, because finding that balance is difficult. And I'll just recognize that, because that balance point changes, and changes sometimes slowly and sometimes quickly, like we have seen this past year and a half.
And how does that communication, most effectively work in your experience? Is it when it's kind of bottoms up from the technician, or when it's kind of top down from the manager?
It depends on if you're addressing needs, it's bottom up. If you're addressing expectations, it's a top down. Because and I think if it's an open communication with trust and respect, it goes well both ways.
Well, that's great.
Absolutely.
Well, good. Okay, I'm going to break it up a little bit with a little bit of a random question.
Okay.
We're here to talk about productivity.
Yes.
So we all do things to be a little bit more productive in our day-to-day, and that could be our morning routine. It could be, what we do at work that might be a little odd. Do you have anything that you use particularly to be more effective I know I turn my clock forward in the bathroom, right, just to be 5 minutes fast to keep ahead of things.
That's a great question. I actually slow down, and the first thing I do in the morning is smile before I even get out of bed. And you know, and just make sure I know it's going to work out. And even if it, like, you know, and I just smile. And it sounds a little corny, and I'm smiling right now because I know what it sounds like. And I love your smile. But honestly, if whatever's going to happen, it's going to happen. And I might worry about it, I might not, but it's going to be something to learn from. And, you know, it may or may not work out. It's just going to be, but, you know, I got a great team to work with, you know, and I've enjoyed everything I've done in my career, especially in the biomed field. So, you know, it's been worth it. You know, it's been challenging, it's been difficult at times, but it's been worth it because I've learned so much. So I make it a point to smile every morning and slow down. So that's really been my productivity strategy, is to take those opportunities to smile. Yeah,
Good.
I love that question.
That's a good outlook, can have a big effect on a lot of things. So it's not just the doing, right? It's the you know, how you feel while you're doing it. So great point.
Yeah, that great question. Thank you. I love that one.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
No, I love that challenge.
So I want to jump into another section where, you know, there's things other than running the test that decrease productivity, right? There's finding the medical device, there's finding that one cable that you need, there's switching amperages, right? Do you have any tips and tricks for everyone on the phone today in terms of how to help that along?
Yes, I love this. For my students, I have a list of 3 rules. I won't get into that rule, but there's a rule 0. And this is, I use the doorways. Could be the doorway leaving the shop, doorway leaving going between clinics. And what this is you hit the doorway, ask the question, did I bring everything? You can look at your PM list. You can look at, you know, either the piece of paper online. Just to ask yourself, did I bring everything? And this could be, did I bring the right electrical safety test analyzer? I mean, that could be simple as, did I need the 20 amp analyzer or the 15 amp analyzer? Did I bring the right tools? Did I bring the right cables? Every time hit the doorway, did I bring everything? And doorways are amazing because they're physical things that you go through and you're like, did I bring everything? And there's been so many times I've hit my second or third doorway and went, okay. And this is great for field engineers where you hit your second doorway before you get into the truck. I got to go back because it's way easier to go back before you get into the truck than after you've driven off. So did I bring everything at the doorway?
So don't stop after the first doorway. Ask yourself at every door, because you
Every
might have missed
doorway,
something.
did I bring everything? Because even the elevators, it's like, before you get in that elevator, oh, because you get that. And it's a simple question, and you will remember something on the second or third doorway.
That's true.
Yeah.
Good. So I think the next thing is kind of, we talked about documentation, right? In terms of, hey, justify the procedure you're following, follow that procedure. And I think the last part is really taking those results, right? Those results can go full circle and influence your procedure down the line. But I think making sure that, do you have any thoughts on kind of documenting results and any best practice there?
Absolutely. So one of the things that I found useful for myself is, as a technician and an engineer, is document for myself, because often I'm going to be the one that has to read the notes in 6 months. So I tell people, document for the next person, because often you're going to be the next person that will have to explain it to the manager or someone of what you did, because it's not going to happen in a week from now when it's fresh in your mind where you have to understand what you did or explain what you did. It's going to be in a month, 2 months, 6 months, where it's going to come back and be like, this is what happened. So record concisely and clearly what you did, because I personally do not want to read a book of a synopsis of a blow by blow of what happened, but I want to clearly and concisely understand what I did, what I found, how I found it, and what I did to resolve any problems, you know, or what my test reading were to see if there was any trends of things going out of spec. Because often you can see trends, even if things were within the specifications, if they were slowly going and drifting out of specifications. And that is so helpful. So document your readings if required or when required, as if you're the next person that has to go and troubleshoot this trend, as if you're the next person that has to go and follow up on this. And it has been so helpful, and I have thanked my past self so many times that it has been such a blessing. So document as if you're documenting for yourself.
Yeah, I think there's a lot that's applicable even outside of the biomed world. I know just having emails to justify why you did one thing or the other, or something to look back on. I think having a good digital record is really important. And I think looking at trend data, I think all of that is a lot easier as you kind of pay attention to that over time. And I think one easier way, which just came up on the screen, is 1QA, right? So I think being able to do a lot of those things, pushing the automation of your test procedure, getting that data, collecting all of those notes, putting it in one place, does help in terms of kind of being able to do that and helping out the next person. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. And like I said, being the next person, it's often you, because especially in the biomed environment, you're going to be on the team, you're going to be in that group that deals with this certain make model, you'll be in that certain department, and often you'll be the subject matter expert for a device. So often you'll be the one that comes up and will take vital signs monitor or infusion pumps. If you're dealing with that and it's like, hey, what happened with this one? How many vital signs monitors are you seeing in a year? You're not going to remember the details of that one from 6 months ago, but luckily you had the foresight to document it already. You had the foresight to put your results into your database. And look, you already have it here. Let me pull it up. And once again, you're not only the superhero for the equipment, you're the superhero for documenting.
Yeah, and it's great to have all the data together for the medical device asset, right? You said patient monitor, you know, part of that is using your patient simulator, but the other part is electrical safety testing. Wouldn't it be nice to have all of that together to see how they're trending in one spot?
Any data you can collect, if watching those trends, will be able to track it back in time. And that's really where you look like a superhero. It's just a data point at the time, but being able to go back in time in your database through 1QA or whatever data you have, it is so powerful.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, no, thank you. I think that's probably a good spot to end. So I think we just ticked over the half-hour mark. So Katya, any final thoughts?
Yeah, so thank you both very much for the discussion. I'm really sad that we have to end it at the 30-minute mark, but thank you, Michael, thank you, Ben, for having such a great chat, and thank you everyone for attending today's event. Please fill out the survey at the end, let us know how we can improve the series in the future, and we will see you in the next episode of Quick Connections with Fluke Biomedical.
And thank you, Ben, for joining us today.